welcome to Janette's TV. I'm your host, Janette Burke. We are live on location at the International Center in Mississauga, and we are here for the Canadian Baking and Sweet Show. We are now going to talk with Food Network baking sweetheart, Anna Olson. Welcome to Janette's TV.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you. Now, we know that you've been very successful with the Food Network. You've had several shows, Baking with Anna, a number of other ones, as well as you have now a YouTube channel, Yummy. It's called Oh Yum. That sounds great. I'm also a YouTuber, so that's great. Tell me a little bit about how you got started as a chef, because I know you had a different sort of idea in mind when you were going to school in Kingston.
That's right. I was on a different career path, Janette, and I think like a lot of people who love baking, baking was my stress reliever. I grew up baking. It was my after-school activity. I wasn't athletically inclined, so I would go home and make cookies instead of playing hockey or figure skating or playing soccer. And it was so much a part of my life, I didn't even see it. So when I went to university, I studied political science and sociology. And then I went into banking, and I had even considered law as a career. But through that whole process, it was baking that would always anchor me and make me happy. And I had what I call my muffin epiphany. There was a moment where I was up at 2 a.m. making banana muffins, not because I wanted to eat them, because it was the activity that made me happy and cleared my head. And in that moment, I realized, what am I doing? So I quit, and I haven't looked back.
Well, I'm glad you didn't look back. So you're also a seven-time published author, and with 7 different cookbooks. And I believe there's a lot of women out there that would like to somehow write a story or write a book. Mm-hmm. What's the difference between just writing a book and being published and becoming a best-selling author?
Well, the number of books you sell makes you the bestseller. But when it comes to writing and sharing, recipes are my way of communicating to people. And I think the key to success is to be authentic and true to yourself, because people will see through you if you aren't authentic. And what I love is that a cookbook, while it's a collection of recipes, also tells a complete story at the same time. And so to take the time to tell that story, how you arrange the recipes, the tips and notes you include, that's your personal touch. Because you can Google chocolate cake and you're going to get 32 million options for chocolate cake. But what makes my chocolate cake special or your chocolate cake special? That's where the story and the value and that personal sharing comes in.
So since you brought it up, what does make your chocolate cake special?
Well,
what's your signature piece on?
I have a number of chocolate cake recipes. Most of my favorite chocolate cakes use oil as opposed to butter to keep it nice and moist. I like to work in sour cream, sometimes even mayonnaise, and really good quality cocoa powder is key.
Okay, so I have another question for you. I mean, sweets, everybody loves sweets. Baking, it's very hard to resist, but today we also have a lot of health challenges, and there are vegans that don't want to eat certain things, and I also ask about diabetes because I happen to be a diabetic. So do you have any tips for making, like, I love sweets, but with less sugar or less carbs?
Well, you know what? Here at the show, I was going to spend a little time talking about those biggest questions, substitutions and replacements for conventional baking recipes. And there are tons of options out there. So there's not, the conversation is not as simple as for this, use that, but it's when this, use that. So take an egg replacement. When I'm making something simple like banana bread or cookies, I'll use 2 tablespoons of flax seeds soaked in 3 tablespoons of water for every 1 egg. But if I'm making my butterless, eggless butter tarts, I will use 2 ounces of silken tofu for every 1 egg, because it's a different set, it's a different consistency and texture, and it bakes differently into things.
That just sounds delicious. Just talking about it, I was like, oh, I want one of those.
And when it comes to reducing sugar, I'm a big fan of using coconut palm sugar in place of granulated sugar because it registers half on the glycemic index. So
That's good.
In combination with portion control, you can really lower your glycemic index on your consumption of sweet goods.
Now, you are married to another chef, Michael Olson, and it was a very interesting story. I'd love for you to share how you guys fell in love and met literally over the first bite.
Well, we worked together. Michael was executive chef and I was pastry chef at Inn on the 20 in beautiful Jordan in Niagara. And we were both philosophically aligned with our thinking on food, cooking with local seasonal ingredients, treating them as simply as possible. And it just blossomed into more than just professional from there.
That's great. It's lasted too, which is good, right? Like a lot of people don't last when they start off working together, then they wind up in love. You know, it doesn't always work out. Thank God it did for you.
Well, and we would make a horribly boring reality show because we don't fight in the kitchen. We cook cooperatively. And actually today, my husband's at another event because he has a cookbook that just came out.
Oh, that's great. Okay, what is your absolute favorite thing about baking that, you know, really motivates you and keeps you passionate about it?
Well, I love baking, and I think most bakers would agree that there's a sense of selflessness, but yet a little bit of selfishness at the same time. The selflessness comes because you bake to share. No recipe ever serves one, and it's always about a presentation, whether it's an occasion, to bring to the office, school, what have you. Baking is to share. It's always that extra. You don't feed your family chocolate chip cookies, or you shouldn't. But also the selfishness comes in, and selfish is not the best word, but it's a real confidence booster. When you pull that cake out of the oven, or you finish decorating it, and you feel good about what you've done, because you can say, I did that. Some people can...
accomplishment.
Yeah, some people can play an instrument. Some people can golf. Bakers bake.
And bakers, I mean, really, would you not say have a very strong creative sense?
Oh, yes. And it is completely a myth to say you don't have creativity when it comes to baking recipes. You have so much power in how you take simple ingredients and blend them together. It's amazing. And with repetition and practice, you start understanding you have control, and the creativity is boundless.
So I also took a peek at your website last night, and I see now that you have a lot coming out for the holidays.
Yes.
So would you like to tell us a little bit more about some of your new stuff out for the holidays?
Well, my most recent cookbook is called Set for the Holidays, and it is sweet and savory, so it's not all baking. But I apply a lot of baking techniques to the savory world. So a lot of people struggle for quick and easy appetizers and hors d'oeuvres. So I take that baking principle of the square. You know, we love making Nanaimo bars, butter tart squares. And if you do it in a savory way, like sausage dressing squares or spinach artichoke squares, you have that same ease and comfort with baking, but all of a sudden now you're creating something new and different. So a lot of baking tips for getting ahead in the holidays, because now is when to start.
So much of my audience are professional women and working women, and they're very hard pressed to find time to even prepare anything, let alone a holiday meal. They really want to keep it simple. Do you have a tip or two that you could share with them to get ready for the holidays and maybe prepare something for the table that won't take up so much of their time?
Well, I think the great thing is you can start now. There is so much out there you can do other than actually roasting the turkey that you can do ahead of time and freeze or store. Even little get-ahead moments like blanching your green vegetables a day or two ahead of time, and you shock them in ice water before they're fully cooked. That takes 2 steps and 2 pans off the stove when you don't have time. When it comes time to putting that holiday meal together, you can make the cookies now. So many desserts can be frozen. So we have that advantage of when you do find that window of time, maybe it's, Sunday morning, you've got 2 hours, turn on the oven, bake a few things, pop them in the freezer, and you're that far ahead.
So it's a time saver and a stress reliever.
Yes.
So you're not leaving it all to the last minute. Okay, last question. You have been involved in movements that help women with becoming chefs when they may not have had that opportunity, and also with giving back to I guess, people who don't have food on the table. And would you like to tell us a little bit more about that? And that really inspires me, and I think it's something that maybe myself and my audience might want to know how they could be involved in something like that.
Well, speaking of the holidays, my husband and I always cook a holiday meal for our local women's shelter. And it's a really nice way to give back and respect the strength of the women to have reached out for help and get the help that they need, and it sets them on their way so beautifully. A lot of people ask what happens to all of the food I make when I'm recipe testing, when I'm taking food photographs, and when I'm taping my TV show. And a few things, a couple of options. Some of my team work at local hospices, so they'll pack up goodies and send them home to the hospice for all the volunteers and the families and patients. And we're big supporters of our local food bank and shelter. And they'll take, it's so funny because I'll give them a cake and it may have a slice out of it, but they know it's not used. It was used for a photograph, and because I can declare everything that's in there, any allergy sensitivities, and because I bake for allergy sensitivities, just because you're staying in a shelter, you may be vegan or gluten intolerant. And you know what? Our local community is great about supporting in terms of donating fresh ingredients, but sometimes you just want a treat. So
I think that's really, really amazing, not just because you're giving back and helping people who are, less fortunate, but also because you're not wasting anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, there's so much waste in our society. In other countries, people are going and starving, and you're making like a good use of it. So that's really good. I want to also mention that you are recognized in 160 countries. Yeah. That's quite an accomplishment. And where are you going to go from here? This is our shameless promotion a little bit at the end. Tell us a little about what you have next, where you're going, and anything else you want to promote.
Well, you know what? I'm already working on a new book project, but you have to be patient. It takes 2 years to write a cookbook. But you can see me right away on I am doing guest appearances on a Canadian great cake show called The Big Bake, and it airs on the Food Network Mondays at 10 p.m. It's fantastic because it's a Canadian production, but it is huge. The scale of the cakes that the contestants are making are absolutely incredible. So I'm a guest judge coming up.
That I will definitely check out. And just state for me the website so our viewers can find you. And there's great information on the website. There's a blog, there's recipes, there's all kinds of things. Tell us how we can reach you.
Sure. You can find all about me. You can find lots of my recipes at annaolson.ca, and including Anna Olson Kitchen, which is the new bakeware line now available exclusively at the Bay.
Oh, wow, that's great. So thank you so much for this time today, and thank you for being here. Thank you for being with us today. This is Janette Burke, your host, signing off for Janette's TV. Please remember to like, comment, and share all our posts with the wonderful women and smart men in your life. You will find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Vimeo, YouTube. We're there, we're everywhere, we're all over the internet. #Janette's TV. And until next time, continue to be fabulous.